Might actually go to your computer.
I think so too.
Recording in progress. Okay, thank you everybody for bearing with me. We can go ahead and start and we'll just pay attention to if anyone trickles in. Thanks so much. Hello, Nels' cat. Mimi is here.
Hi.
Wait, Mimi, you have to do your intro. This is my cat.
Oh, I don't
You don't have a cat in the
have a cat.
office.
Wait,
Thank you so much to all of our students who are putting up with some of my technical difficulties. I will give you a little bit of background. Because I have graduated, UW has kicked me off of all the technology, but I'm still running this summer program. And so I don't have access to Zoom or to my email or to my old calendars anymore. So I've been transitioning, and I will be transitioning to Hopkins as well during this program, but Phuong and Nels are being really amazing and helping with everything there. So this is a really casual introduction to the three of us, so you know where we're coming from and how we are going to what our perspective is for the summer and for the class. So Phuong, Nels, and I have some questions that we'll start off with, and then we will give you all time to ask your own questions as well. But to get a little bit into textile as a program. So I created this during my PhD. It was a chapter in my thesis. And I actually created this program during COVID because the NANS lab tends to have a lot of undergraduates and all of them were going to lose their position. So I just thought, oh, I'll teach a bunch of students my research. And then we expanded beyond that. So last year we taught 30 high school and undergraduate students, and you all are our second cohort. So this is hopefully an improved version of what we did last year. I've published about this work in the chemical engineering education, and we also intend to expand into a nonprofit as I move over to Hopkins into the Maryland area as well. But we'll see. So textile, if you have questions about that, please just send them in the chat or send them in the help and questions channel on the textile Slack. Now we'll go into a little bit of introduction. Nels and Phuong, do you have the questions I sent you? They're in the Slack. In textile Slack, not in NANS Lab Slack.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we'll just start with number one. Introduction. Hi, everybody. I am Hawley. I am no longer a PhD student. I just defended, what's the date? Less than a month ago. I defended May 24th, and I just graduated like last week, maybe a week ago. So I now have my PhD, and I'm going to be a postdoctoral researcher at Johns Hopkins in the division of neonatology, which is very, very young children, starting in August. In textile, I created it. I'm the main data science lead. I will be expanding to Maryland and Hopkins possibly. And why am I excited to be a textile instructor is the fourth point I have here. This program has been really amazing. Connecting with all of you gives us, I think, new ways of thinking about our research, but also when I was an undergraduate, neither of my parents have doctorates. My dad's an engineer, but he stopped at a bachelor's degree. I knew nothing about research as a career. I had no idea like things like PhD programs are paid until I got an offer letter to a PhD program that had like a salary amount on it. So I just want to open up new avenues for people that maybe didn't know about all of them. Phuong can go next so we don't have awkward silences.
Okay, hello. My name is Phuong, she, her pronouns. I'm an incoming fifth year. Oh my gosh, incoming fifth year, which hopefully will be my last year here in the NANS lab.
It will be. You'll be out by next September.
That's true. I have to be out my next year. My PI will not allow me to stay longer. So I'm a fifth year. I'm not in chemical engineering, actually. I'm in molecular engineering, which, to be honest with you, all of these interdisciplinary, and I hope that you'll learn this throughout the program, that the beauty of interdisciplinary work is that people come from all backgrounds, and title doesn't necessarily matter too much, just because people come from all different walks of life, and interdisciplinary research combines so many different perspectives and so many different facets of research that what department you're in or what title you have doesn't necessarily matter too much anymore. Um, but yeah, my work in particular here in the NANCE lab is I investigate extracellular vesicles. So these are basically your cells produce extracellular vesicles in the body. These are biologically derived nanoparticles that your cells produce, and they use them to communicate with one another. And because they use, because cells communicate with each other through these particles, you can imagine that it's really important to be able to track them, figure out where they're going, figure out what types of messages these cells are sending, especially during like an injury, during a injury or disease. So that's pretty much what I'm working on in my project, just being able to label and track these extracellular vesicles in the brain, in the neonatal brain, I might add. So the reason why I joined textile is very similar, honestly, to what Hawley was saying. First of all, Hawley's great. We're good friends. We're all friends here. Nels is a great friend too. And I am actually a first generation student. My parents did not graduate from college. Actually, yeah, my parents did not graduate from college. They have high school degrees. And so I remember going into college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I honestly didn't even know. I thought that I saw somebody saying this in Slack, but I legitimately thought that if you wanted to do research, you had to be a professor. That was the only route. And I also thought that if I wanted to do research in medicine, the only way to do that is to be a doctor, like a medical doctor. I didn't realize that there were other routes for me. And so I kind of had to learn this throughout college, and it was a lot of work, and it was really, really intimidating to learn it by yourself. And so I really appreciated, Holly came up to me and talked to me about textile, and I really appreciated her like willingness to make science more accessible to students. And I love the aspect of textile not only being a class where you learn material, but also a class where you learn about like career development, professional development, like all of that. I think is super important to think about. So yeah, I think those are all the questions. Did I miss one? I think that's it.
You got the starting group, yeah.
Awesome.
Hey everyone, I'm Nels. I am a third-year grad student, but first-year PhD student, so I have about 3 years left. So in general, I would describe it saying like a third year, or becoming a third year, I guess. I am actually in the Department of
Wait,
Chemistry at UW.
You have to describe that more. Nell's got a
But
master's.
I thought that was for later.
Oh, okay.
That's a future question.
I
yeah, I thought that was later too. That's why I didn't bring that up either.
You got a master's degree first.
Yeah, I'll get to that in the appropriate section.
I apologize. Thank you, Nell.
Oh, you're good. So yeah, I'm actually in the Department of Chemistry. When I was looking at grad schools, or I guess when I got into my master's program, and it was in chemistry, and I found that the research that I wanted to do wasn't really happening in chemistry as much as I'd liked, and they were kind enough to let me look at other departments, and I found Dr. Nance's lab, and it just was much better fit with what I actually want to do. So despite being in chemistry, I'm in a chemical engineering lab, and I work with a lot of neuroscience and data analysis. So similar to Phuong, I think I really love how interdisciplinary I am, despite at the core being a chemist. So it's cool I get to do a bunch of different things. And then my role in textile is the machine learning lead. So a lot of my work focuses on how we can take data science and machine learning tools and use them to better understand the data we're generating in the lab. So I love kind of talking about this stuff. So I get to do that, which is great. And I'm excited to be a textile instructor because for the first, I think, 2.5 years of my undergraduate education, I was in undergraduate research. I was a completely wet lab. I was doing rodent surgeries, all that fun stuff that then I realized after doing a little bit of coding in the lab, I didn't like it as much as I like coding. And so starting to learn to code in combination with my interests in biology and neuroscience and chemistry, really opened up like a brand new career path for me that I didn't even know was feasible. Like I thought I could learn to code, I have to be a software engineer, which I didn't want to do. And so I really think that learning to code is really powerful and can, even if you just know a little of it, I think it's really great for a lot of different career paths. And so I'm really excited to be able to teach. I just love teaching people how to code, and how to apply, specifically how to apply code to answer really, really cool problems about science. So I'm excited to do that for the rest of the summer.
I think Phuong forgot to introduce that she's the wet lab lead. Do you
Oh,
want to?
yes, I'm the wet lab lead. Yes, thank you.
So that's we do computational work and we also do wet lab work. So that's like what you would think of like a hands-on bench work. Nels and I both do some of that, but it wasn't the majority of our research and it's not our role in textile. Cool. And the next intro I want us each to give, we're going to give an intro to our research and then an intro to our educational journey, a smidgen about our careers, and then we'll get to all of your questions. Please feel free to add questions to the chat. I'm recording them now and we will get to them after that. So my research is really a lot of what you all will learn this summer on a slightly smaller scale. So I quantify the shapes of the immune cells in the brain and how those shapes respond to injury and treatment, and how we can use those shapes to understand more about the brain microenvironment. For instance, in states of inflammation, your brain's immune cells will remove all of their branches and become very circular. You'll actually get to see that process this summer in data that we're using, which are actually from papers we published in the lab. So it's real data that we have really gathered from brains. I also have two other projects. One, I do educational research. If any of you are interested in education, I'm happy to talk about that. So textile is a big part of that. And then I do this other work in database development, connecting how nanoformulations are made with how they actually work in the biological environment. Going on to my postdoc at Hopkins, which I'll be transitioning to during this process, I will be doing some of the same things, but in models of hydrocephalus. So that's when there's fluid buildup in the brain, but also incorporating more advanced behavioral testing across animal models, MRI imaging, and then also I do some weird work and predicting and comparing species responses. So I do some of that. I think my PhD is atypical and that my projects are very, very diverse from each other, more so than the average person.
Oh, okay, it's me. Yeah, so I explained a little bit about what I'm doing for my work, studying extracellular vesicles, being able to track and label them as they move throughout the brain during in both healthy and injured neonates, which is really cool. I'm actually collaborating. The great thing about extracellular vesicles is that every cell in your body produces them. And so this makes them an important area of study for any model system, not only the brain. So I actually have a strong collaboration with the OBGYN department at UW, where I study extracellular vesicles in vaginal tissue. So that's kind of another big aspect of my work during my PhD. In terms of educational.
Me and Phuong.
Oh my gosh, yes!
Have also
Holly and I are also collaborators. Exactly, yeah. We are on papers together. We're legitimately collaborators, and Nels and I are currently working on a collaboration as well. So again, a lot of interdisciplinary, collaborations with each other, which is really fun. Yeah, in terms of my educational journey, let's see. I don't know if you could tell, but I love interdisciplinary work. I've never stuck with one major. I've just every time I've moved on to I've changed so many majors in my life, and I think I encourage that you explore different majors, honestly. So I did my bachelor's at Stanford. I majored in material science, engineering. That being said, I think I came in being pre-med. I used to be a biology major, and I switched to like psychology, and I switched to chemistry. I switched like 5 times before I settled on material science. But I think it was good for me to have different perspectives from different majors in college. And I do recommend you try out several majors as well when you explore your undergrad. So yeah, majored in material science in undergrad. After Stanford, I moved up here to UW to get my master's. Um, and I had thought at the time that I wanted to go into industry, and I did a master's so I can have extra. Just because I switched around, like I spent a lot of time exploring the undergrad, I didn't feel like I had enough under my belt. So I joined a master's program because I wanted more. I want to take more classes, basically. Like I want to take more classes to supplement my engineering knowledge. And then somewhere along the way, I realized that I really liked research because I did a. Maybe you can ask me questions about this as well, but there's research-based masters and non-research-based masters. I went into a research master's program, so I had to like have a thesis and everything. But during my research, I realized I really liked doing it and I wanted to continue doing it. And so that's why I kind of stayed. I went directly from my master's degree into a PhD program. So yeah, that was my educational journey. And similar to Nels, he also has a master's degree. So, but I do want to stress that a master's is absolutely not needed. You can certainly, like Hawley went straight from undergrad to grad school to PhD. So you don't need a master's in between. But I did it because I thought that I had wanted to go into industry. Turns out I didn't. I didn't end up doing that. But
you'll see on my like CV, and I messaged before that all my degrees are in chemical engineering, and I say that I have a master's degree, but I actually got that on my way to my PhD. So it's technically not a thesis master's. It's just something that UW gives PhD students at the completion of their candidacy exam. So yeah, my master's was very different than Nels and Phuong's.
Wait, Phuong, are you gonna have or do you have two master's degree then? Right, you have two, right? Yeah, so I think I'm gonna have two as well. One of them being completely useless. Yeah, so my research is I'm really interested in the brain diseases, and this is a great lab to be in when you have those interests. And so one of the tools that we use in our lab is called multiple particle tracking, which I don't know if we'll specifically go into that much this class, but we'll work with some multiple particle tracking data. But basically what it lets you do is in a brain tissue, you can put these nanoparticles that are fluorescently tagged in, and under a really powerful microscope, you can actually track how they're moving over a few seconds and understand how they are moving in the environment outside of the cells in the brain. And their motion can be indicative of specific changes that relate to a disease condition. And so a lot of the fantastic wet lab scientists in our lab, they do the actual hard work of optimizing that experimental setup. Then I do a little bit of that, but
Nels has optimized this for human tissue. He's not selling himself enough. He's doing this in.
I was going to get to that.
Okay, you're not
Well,
selling
it's
yourself
not true.
enough.
Well, I want to talk more about the data science anyway. But yeah, so I'm really interested in how we can take tools in data science and machine learning and how we can then apply those tools to the data we're collecting in tissue, and specifically then how can we figure out how those changes we can see with data science and machine learning, how they actually relate to the underlying biology and chemistry of the disease, and hopefully just get a much better sense of what actually is changing at the very low level for these disease conditions, to hopefully in the future help better make therapies that could go back and help affect the specific issues the things that are changing. So yeah, I do work with data from rodents. I'm doing some work now where I go to Harborview Medical Center, if people know where that is, like the big trauma center in Seattle. I literally go in and someone gives me a piece of human brain tissue from a surgery, and then I take it back. The surgery is completely non-fatal. It's a totally like safe surgery, thankfully. It's it's not anything crazy. The person goes and lives a full rest of their life. But then it's like literally tissue that would get tossed in, just get like thrown out essentially. So they're not even like getting extra tissue for me. It's like literally tissue that's waste. But because of what we're trying to understand about the disease condition, it can be helpful. So then I take that, and do the multiple particle tracking and get data there. I'm also really interested in, and this is kind of a newer project, figuring out how we can optimize data visualizations for this type of data collection. So a lot of it right now is I don't know, not that standardized. And so one of my collaborators and I have been working on making a software package that really quickly lets researchers get visualizations that can hopefully tell us more quickly about how an experiment is doing, what's changing. So yeah, we're just really interested in applying those kind of tools to really get the most out of our data. There's also a topic called explainable AI, which is the idea that a lot of times complicated machine learning models are, you don't really know why they're making the predictions that they are. And a big field in the last few years has been making it so we can actually understand those predictions through mathematical things that I don't necessarily understand, but I know how to generate them. And I think that's just a really big breakthrough, especially in biology and neuroscience and chemistry, because instead of just random being like, oh, this is disease, this is not disease, we can specifically find out what in the data is pointing to a disease state or a normal state, and just get a lot more insight. My educational journey. So I went to UW for undergrad as well. So I've been at UW my entire educational career after high school. I mostly went to UW because I already had a lab I could join right away. I'd been volunteering during my senior year of high school, and I wanted to just hit the ground running right away when I got to UW and not have to like go through finding a new lab somewhere else. And so that was one of the deciding factors going to UW. And even though, so I guess I first wanted to be a biology major, and then I took, this is, some people are going to disagree with this, but I took an intro to organic chemistry at the end of my freshman year, and I loved it so much that I switched from biology to biochemistry. Most people don't like OChem. I get it. I disagree. I think it's super fun, but I get why most people hate it. And even though I was doing, my classwork was all about chemistry, my actual research was in a neurological surgery lab. And so that's where I did a lot of the rodent surgeries. And so even just at that point, I was getting a pretty good interdisciplinary education through having coursework very different than my actual research, which was cool. My senior year, the Department of Chemistry here was like, oh, we're going to make a brand new master's program. And if you are currently an undergrad in chemistry or biochemistry, you're like, we'll tell you in 2 weeks if you get in or not. So I ended up not applying to anywhere else besides UW just because they told me I was in before I had time to apply anywhere else. So that's why I chose to do my master's. At that point in time, I thought I wanted to go into industry. And because I had only started coding like my junior year of undergrad, I wanted a little bit more time to really flesh out those technical skills. So I was like, okay, I'll do a master's, I'll learn a lot more coding stuff, and then I'll be ready to apply for industry jobs. And then I just really loved the work that was happening at the Nance lab, and Elizabeth's like, hey, you should apply for lab for a PhD here, and I did, and I got in. So I decided to stay. I did find that I like research. I guess I knew I liked it. I think I find out I liked it more than I thought I did, which is one reason I wanted to stay. I think if I'd been in another lab though, I probably would have gone to industry. I think it really is less about doing research on university, more of I really, really care about the research that's happening in the lab. And so that was really the decision to make me want to do a PhD versus going to industry. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Nels. I didn't really introduce my education much. So I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and then I got a full ride to Arizona State University. So I attended that because it was free. And that was really, really nice. And I was also in Barrett, the honors college at Arizona State. UW also has an honors college. And when you're in the honors college at Arizona State, you have to do research and you have to do an honors thesis. So that was a real selling point for me to be like, oh, I don't really know what this research thing is, but it sounds like something I could be interested in. Like Phuong, I was pre-med. I think I went a little further than Phuong. I went all to the
Yeah,
way.
you did.
I took my MCAT and started my applications for medical school, and the process just felt very wrong for me. And my undergraduate research advisor was like, why don't you try going to the student chemical engineering conference, and I went there. Someone told me about nanoparticles, and I went, cool, I'm doing a PhD. Let me figure this out. That was 2 weeks before applications were due. Got letters of rec and took the GRE, which is no longer required, and wrote a statement within like a few weeks, which was kind of ridiculous. But I got in, so this is the path that I'm on. Just like Phuong said, I changed my major 5 times before I became a chemical engineer. So I actually started as a biomedical engineer for my entire first year of my undergrad. But depending on your program, this isn't true at UW, but it is at Arizona State. Most of the BME was prosthetics, and I wasn't interested in prosthetics at all. I was interested in like more medicine type things. And so I thought I was going to be a material science engineer. And then I became a math major. And then I tried something else. I don't remember what it was. And then I became a chemical engineer. But I tried all of those very, very quickly. And then picked chemi and realized I could do anything I wanted with it. And I have done a lot of weird projects I'm sure I will talk about at some point this summer. But I went straight from my bachelor's to my PhD and just got the master's along the way, but I didn't do any extra work, and it doesn't have like a fancy project associated with it. Cool. We can, don't worry, guys, we'll get to those questions after this. And then just a brief introduction for all of us to our career goals. I want to put out there for everyone in this class that even as PhD students, our career goals change often. Probably as a postdoc, maybe hopefully not so much, but as a postdoc, people's careers also change quite a lot if they haven't already picked a path. So it's totally okay that you all do not know at this point. This summer is a stress-free opportunity to learn and for us to provide you discussions, guidance, and feedback about who you can talk to and where you can go to learn more. So my career goal, I finished my PhD and now I'm doing what's called a postdoctoral research position, which in engineering is typically between 1 and 4 years. In other fields, it can be much longer, which gives me some time to explore a new project area before I hopefully apply to become a tenure track research professor at a large R1 university. You need a PhD to do that process. So I got a PhD. Just pick any.
Okay, sorry. I can never.
That's okay.
A career. Oh my gosh, Holly.
I know. Phuong keeps telling me not to talk to her about careers. You just have to pick a path today. You don't have to.
Yeah, I do. I really love research. That's all I'm gonna say. I love research, so I'd really love my career goals are to lead. I want to lead a research team. I'm not sure whether or not that means. I'm not sure if it's in academia or industry yet, but I do want to lead my own team of researchers or a national lab.
Maybe.
Yes, national labs are also another option. Holly has been trying to get me to look into the NIH because it's right by Baltimore, which honestly is a viable option. I am super interested in that too. So I want to lead my own research project. I just don't know exactly what that would look like yet, but you also need a PhD to do that. So that's why. Oh, thanks, Holly. Yes, the NIH stands for the National Institutes of Health. It's the national lab.
Yeah, if at any point we say an acronym or a word you do not understand, please just message it and we will provide a definition or a description. A lot of it is just like, a lot of it's not like you're expected to know these things. They're just terminology we get so used to. So it's good practice for us to remember that we're not in our niche field, but I also really want this to be accessible. So anyhow, side.
Yes. Yeah, no, so that's my career. I just want to lead research projects in a like more of a managerial position. So, and I will need a PhD for that. So, hence that's why I'm here.
Nels.
You stole my career goal.
His career goal changes as well. Mine has changed too.
Mine hasn't changed. I've honestly been 3 years with having 2 years, which is like the longest I've gone, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, I am also very interested in leading a research team. I guess the main difference is I have no interest in staying in academia after I get my PhD. I really want to join a company that is kind of in between like big company and in between like university research. So these are places like Fred Hutch or the Allen Institute are two examples that come to mind for me, where they are doing research and one of their main goals is publishing research papers, but they're not directly affiliated with an academic institution. So like the long-term goal would be leading a research team within one of those companies. I think that'd be really cool. I do think also national labs would be cool, but I can't say I've thought about that as much. I think I'm pretty set on those kind of biotech companies, but of course that could change. And to be, I guess one of the reasons I also chose to continue pursuing a PhD, and this is something I generally recommend people do when they really want to start thinking about jobs, is I looked a lot on like LinkedIn and Glassdoor about kind of the job titles and places I'd be interested in. And I saw that basically everything for the place I want to be in like 15, 20 years requires a PhD. And so that kind of made me realize, okay, like this is definitely, if I want to get to that point, this is a path that is worth pursuing. So I think it is important to like figure out if it's PhD is necessary or not, because if it's not, it is a long time. But in my case, all of those roles were being filled by people with PhDs. So it just made sense for me to do that. Long term, also after that though, I'm also interested in being a data science type consultant. I think that would be really cool. I do love science, but I also just love in general coding, solving problems with coding. And so I think that'd be a fun like side gig or post main career would be trying to use the knowledge I gain in my career with learning how to do good coding practices and develop machine learning data science solutions, applying those to other fields where someone else would be bringing the problems to me or to me and my team, that we'd be figuring out the best way to apply data. That one probably needs a PhD less, but I think it'd be probably helpful.
I think it depends on your application of whether it needs a PhD or not.
That's
Certain
true.
people will prefer you to have a PhD in that area, and certain companies will care less. Nels also brings up a good point. National labs are another group that are kind of outside of industry and academia, and that they receive a lot of governmental funding. And they apply for a lot of grants, but they work more like industry. But Nels also brings up the points of things like the Allen Institute, Fred Hutch Cancer Center, which is actually more structured like industry, but they still bring in a lot of federal grants, and so they act more like academia, are two in-betweens of working between like at a university that does research versus working at like a large company like Medtronic, or a small company that mainly works off of like venture capital funds. Those are all different areas that process differently, as opposed to like a nonprofit as well. At Phuong, and I'm not asking you this question, a student just accidentally private messaged me instead of you. I can show the receipts if you want it. What type of research are you interested in leading, or is it just any research in general?
Great question. I yeah, I at the very least throughout this PhD, and actually I think this is a question that I got earlier as well. Through my collaboration, I actually realized that I'm really interested in women's health, in particular. So research pertaining to understand like diagnosing women's health issues, addressing women's health issues, like designing therapeutics for women's health issues. All of those things are really interesting to me. Yeah, again, my collaborator is in the OBGYN department. So, she works with patients, specifically women patients, all the time. And I just thought that was super cool. So I'm hoping to lead a project in women's health. As an engineer, I'm more interested in more like designing therapies, like engineering therapeutics. I'm more interested in that versus like the biology, like understanding the immune cells of the vagina. Like I'm more interested in designing and building things than the biology of it, even though that is certainly interesting as well. But yeah, I'm hoping that I can do a women's health project specifically more on like the engineering therapeutics. And yes, you are right. Fred Hutch is really cool. My partner did his work at Fred Hutch. Yeah, it's a really nice facility.
Oh, he did.
Uh,
He did, right?
yeah,
Did
yep,
his
he did.
defense there. Okay. I thought I maybe was going crazy.
They have a lot of cool research projects at Fred Hutch. They actually, I know that there are a lot of high school opportunities for high school students to work at Fred Hutch as well, and undergrads. But you should definitely look into Fred Hutch. They have a really nice research institute, honestly.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to give everyone 30 seconds now to please think of and ask a question in the chat. And then we have a couple that we'll start with after that. But I just want to give you all a second to like think about it. So we're going to start that time now and we're going to be silent. Okay. Please put your questions in the chat and I'll make sure that we all answer them. There's no question like too simple or no question too complex. This is our first time to really get a gauge of where you all are at, and what you all are interested in as well. So first I'm going to address this one. There are 3 other questions that were asked earlier. We're going to get to those first. Don't worry, anyone that asked those. And to Amber, yes, the recording for this session will be posted. I probably won't post it. I'll try to get them up always within a week, but that's going to be variable just because there's so much going on with moving right now. But I'll try to get it up by next Tuesday. Cool. First question that we have earlier, and it was specifically to me, but I think we can cover it just briefly in like a minute because we've kind of all talked about it, but what made us pick our major. So chemical engineering, I was very interested in because I like to think of the human body as a chemical system. I don't think I'm what you typically think of as an engineer. I'm very much a process engineer at heart. So what I really like to do is improve systems. And so I really like to take current things that exist and figure out why they're wrong and what little tweaks we can do to fix it, rather so much than designing something from scratch. Phuong, you want to quickly describe your materials choice?
Yes, yeah, I studied material science. Literally, it's the science of materials. I ended up doing material science because I realized that I was interested in too many things. And literally, material science, like everything is made out of materials.
Mhm.
Blows your mind. No, like everything, even like biological materials, uh, inorganic materials, like everything is made out of some sort of material. And so I decided to major in it so I could learn about everything, really.
Mhm. Nels, you want to quickly cover chemistry? We've got a decent number of questions to get through.
Yeah. Wait, what was the question again?
Why did you pick your major?
Oh, that's a really good question. It was, I mean, I kind of had to choose something related to life sciences, and I had all of the like background, the prerequisites to apply, and I like biology and I like chemistry, and so biochemistry was a nice middle ground. Um, so that's kind of why. And then for master's, PhD, chemistry, I was already in in the department. It was easy transition. I honestly don't like. I don't think of myself as a chemist. I don't do any actual chemistry, I would say. So I don't think that being in chemistry actually like defines too much of like I chose it more as a means to do neuroscience research, and I think it has given me those opportunities. But I probably not I'm not quite what you think of when you think of a chemist, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. The second question is for everyone. How would you say your interest from high school to college shifted? Um, I'll just start. I had no idea I was interested in chemical engineering, chemistry in high school. Um, Neuroscience never occurred to me. How I really ended up in neuroscience was because I liked Elizabeth Nance. You'll meet her, I think, next week after that. And she was a really amazing boss. And in a PhD, it's important to have an important boss. And then I fell in love with neuroscience in the process of studying it. but I tried to go to small intestine research like just last year. You can talk to Phuong. So I'm happy as long as I'm in bio. I've also worked in national security. I've worked for the Department of Treasury. I've worked in silicon. I pretty much do anything that I find interesting, and I find a way to bring that all back to bio. Phuong or Nels, how has your interest shifted from high school?
Oh, totally. I thought I was going to be like a medical doctor at the point.
That's
Absolutely.
true.
Okay, so when you really think about it, in high school, I don't know, I'm sure it's different from other high schools, but mainly you learn about chemistry, bio, and physics. Like, I think the science that you learn in high school is very different than the science that you're going to learn in college and the science that you like are actually going to be doing in research. So, yeah, absolutely. I've learned a lot just going to college, taking college classes. It was very different from what I thought. I thought I would be a chemist, but then I took OChem. Hated chemistry ever since. Did not like chemistry anymore. So yeah, just know that there's a big world out there. Yeah, it's totally fine to change between high school and college.
Nels?
I was trying to find the thumbs down reaction to food.
Okay, OChem also stands for organic chemistry, just in case those of you who don't know. Organic chemistry.
I liked organic chemistry.
It's so fun.
And
It's very controversial. Very controversial.
Most
but
people
I
don't
am
like
a
it.
chemical engineer. I did like them. I'm with you now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I very differently, I think, from both Hawley and Phuong. I have known I've wanted to do neuroscience research since 8th or 9th grade. And I'm very glad that I was able to do it. I think the big thing that shifted for me is before I was definitely wanted to like be on the wet lab side. The dream as a 9th grader was being a neurosurgeon. But definitely doing more of like the hands-on work. And so really the big thing changed now is I really want to still tackle the same problems of understanding disease states, specifically neuro disease states. But I want to tackle them now from a data-driven computational big data side rather than doing wet lab work. So it hasn't really changed that much, to be honest, which is I think kind of rare. I think I'm kind of weird in the way that I want to do brain stuff and then now I do brain stuff. So
that's okay now. You can be weird. Okay, I think I'll cover this question and then you both can hop in if you have anything to add. So the question is, what are the major differences between academia and industry? And so one that's going to depend on the terminal degree that you have. So as a bachelor's degree, the opportunities in academia are less. You're going to do something like a research tech, maybe. It's which is basically like in a research tech position, what you would be able to do is you would learn 1 or 3 methods really well and you just do them constantly for other people's data. In industry, you might become a research tech with an engineering degree, you might become more of a process engineer or something like that. But typically what you do at a bachelor's degree level in industry is that someone else has a system or something already designed and you're fixing it when it breaks or scheduling in improvements and that type of stuff. At a master's level, in industry that can mean more managerial possessions. Sometimes it can just mean more money. It really is going to depend on where you're living. In academia, a master's is also probably going to keep you at a research technician level. A research scientist in academia often has a PhD. Sometimes in industry, a research scientist is a bachelor's with a lot of experience, but that's becoming less common from the gist that I've gotten. As far as how do they differ, academia is going to be split more into research labs that are typically dependent on one PI. So we're in the Nance lab, and typically they're all based on grants. And a lot of it, unless you're in what we call mega labs, is focused around training. So you're going to work with a lot of PhD students who are new to the project. You're going to be doing something cutting edge. But it's really going to be exploratory. You're going to have a lot of time to do that. In industry, you have deadlines, you have whoever's funding it, or you have whatever the product needs to come out. That keeps things moving faster, but less opportunities to do exploratory projects. National labs, think tanks, those kind of meld those two worlds where some people have more opportunity to explore and other people have to produce results. The way things are trending is PhDs are often the ones who get more chances to explore and pick project areas. Anything to add, anybody? Did I miss something? Cool. Industry for engineers pays a lot better until you're at like a professor level. So we do take pay cuts, but we are paid as PhD students, so it's not miserable. Next question. Could we describe what collaborating and research is like? What pros and cons exist? And do we recommend it for aspiring researchers? Absolutely, I think you have to collaborate and research to get anything done. Do I recommend it? At your level, it's not really going to be your choice. You're either going to be on projects that are collaborations or you're not going to be. If there's an opportunity, I really recommend doing it. But even at the PhD level, like I can do more work for my collaborators. And that's really the only, like Elizabeth says, I'm on the project and it's a collaboration. That's my biggest like decision on whether I'm collaborating. In some ways you can seek them out, but there needs to be funding, and that's typically a level higher than us. What is it like to collaborate? It depends. Phuong and I are in the same lab. Phuong already had a project going on. She already had images. I was like, oh, let me see them. Or Elizabeth probably said, give them to Hawley. And that worked out really well because we're within our lab. My collaborations have been very different than Nels and Phuong's, I believe. So I have three major collaborations. One of them is our PI's husband. He's really amazing. His name's Tommy Wood. He's in pediatrics. And that part is really easy. He's in our Slack. It's very easy to talk to him. We often use each other's research equipment. It's super easy to find him. That's fine. I have two other collaborations. One is I'm on a collaborative grant, but it's a collaborative training grant. So the way that, Nels is on it too now. So the way that we collaborate is just by like sharing code with each other in the way that we like review it and we provide suggestions and we have meetings together, but we don't have a specific project together. So that's more of like a social kind of brain thinking collaboration. And then my other collaborations are international. And so that is mostly they send me tissue, I do some analysis, I send some analysis back, and then we occasionally have meetings. But I don't have a lot of collaborators on UW campus. Phuong is more to talk to about that. She's very into collaboration.
Oh yes, I'm very into collaboration. Yeah, so as Holly was saying, I've collaborated with several professors actually on and off campus. My biggest collaboration is with the OB/GYN department at UW. I also work with somebody in chemistry, in the chemistry department. And I work with a different collaboration in a different school. I think it's like Houston, somewhere in Houston. Those collaborations are very different. I barely talk to them, really. For my role in the collaboration is typically to provide samples. So I provide tissues, I provide extracellular vesicles to them. So my role is typically just to hand off samples, like prepare, like I have one part, I do it, and then I give it off, pass it off to the next person. So that's my role with that. However, I will say my collaboration at UW in the OB/GYN department has been very fruitful. I've learned a lot. Again, it's how I've learned that I am interested in women's health, and that's probably going to be my next career move.
And she spends time there. You spend time in that lab.
I actually work, I'm pretty much honestly split between two labs now, which is really cool. So in that way, I think collaborations opens you to a whole new area of like, you get to talk to different people with different perspectives. You get to learn things from different fields, which is really cool. But I will say, I've had to deal with collaborations are also difficult because sometimes your collaborators are not super reliable.
Or they are very demanding.
Or they're very demanding
on their payroll. Yeah.
Yeah, or they're demanding. So it's just issues with working with a big team. Like sometimes you don't like people on your team. So that can be a downside.
I've had some fizzle out because they never respond, and that's it's very normal. You just go with the ones that are working, really. Now,
right.
You have a lot of data science work because of Dave.
Yeah. So I'm in the NANS lab, but I have someone who I meet with honestly more than Elizabeth, named Dave Beck. He's also in chemical engineering, and has a really data-driven research goals. His goal is really just to help people apply data science tools to new cool things. And so even though my work is really pushing Dr. Nance's research forward, he and I meet regularly. He'd be like, okay, am I doing the right things here? What is these results look like from a very technical perspective? So that's nice where, even though like the Nance lab is a little less like pure technical, most people are wet lab. I have this other person who I meet regularly that I just get to go really deep in on the technical details of it. And so that's been really fruitful to have people I can talk to from both sides, both the experts in neuroscience and disease states, and the experts in general just machine learning data science tools. So.
Cool. Okay, we're getting there on questions. We've got 8 minutes left, so just be cognizant of time. There's a question: not super in love with my research subject right now. How do I weigh the decision to leave against my relationship with my mentors and PI? So wherever you're at right now, undergrad and high school research is not cementing you into what you need to do for your entire career. My advice, and Phuong and Nels can give different advice, if it's a healthy situation for you to be in. So if the only thing is that you're not in love with the research, but your PI is supportive, your team is supportive, it's a healthy place for you to be, then I would stay and get a stronger letter of recommendation for whatever you're going to do next. And just learn whatever skills you can, but plan to switch research areas, because that letter of recommendation is what's most important. If you're getting to a PhD and it's the very beginning of your PhD and you're like talking to different people and you're like, I don't want to do this for the rest of your life, then I would weigh more heavily towards, is it okay because you're in bio and you can still do bio with doing something else, or are you really off field? Phuong or Nels, do you have different perspectives?
I think the only thing I would add is, and this certainly depends on your relationship with your mentor, with the PI, but you can always ask about potential ways to switch if there's other projects in the lab you're more interested in, or if you have ideas for a new type of thing that could be done on the project but would be more tailored to your interest. Like, I think those are things that a supportive PI or mentor would be at least willing to listen to, and so that could be a way of, without still being able to push that, we get that really good letter of rec, you could hope maybe find something slightly more interesting. But again, sometimes that's not the case, but that always could be an option.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely, if you can get on a different project, but I think like even in our PhDs, I don't always love everything I'm working on, but I love like a broader end goal. And I find that that's important. Phuong?
Yeah, I do feel like what you were saying, I think it depends on where you are at. Like for high school and undergrad, I think what Hawley and Nels said is correct. Like, if it's a healthy environment in every other aspect other than the research, then it's the learning more like, I think the bottom line is that it's supposed to be a learning opportunity for you to learn. I think I'm going to be like, coming from a wet lab perspective, PCR is the same no matter where you go. I mean, that's just like you're learning like techniques that can be applied to whatever research you're interested in the future. So you're not tied down to whatever you're doing right now.
If you have more specific concerns and you feel like we answered that too generally, please feel free to message whoever you're more comfortable with, and we're happy to either work it out on Slack. In the past, we've done short meetings to really help you answer those questions. But on general, I would say your research topic in high school and undergrad and even your PhD is not going to cement your career. It'll get you in the right trajectory, and that's what matters.
Yeah, I think you should focus on gaining skills rather than like specific like research projects or something.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. We'll answer all three, but we'll try to wrap up. How do you get involved in the Nance lab? I'll start because mine is the easiest. I got into the chemical engineering program. We have to pick chemi professors, so I talked to a bunch in bio, and Elizabeth and I had the best like mesh of personalities and goals, and all I wanted to do was bio. Phuong and Nels are more complex.
Yeah. Long story short, my program does these things called rotations, so you can try out 3 different labs. I tried out the Nance lab, loved it. The other 2 labs, vibes weren't there. I didn't really. The research was really cool, but I didn't necessarily. This is the situation where I didn't necessarily feel like it was a healthy environment. So I joined the Nance lab.
Yeah, when I was in the master's, or getting like the summer before starting the master's, they required us to basically reach out to 4 labs and just try to set up a meeting with the professor. And Elizabeth was one of the 4 that I met with. And also when I was looking for labs, I was kind of like, I would just look at descriptions of the lab and see like, okay, what are the keywords or what are the recent research publications that like do they interest me. Hers was the only one I could find that had the words like neuroscience, disease, brain disease, and data science. I was like, wow, this seems really great. Met with her, had a fantastic conversation. Ended up also talking with Hawley, I think, afterward. And
He talked to 2 other people before me.
that
I
was
put it
Elizabeth's
over
fault.
his head.
But yeah, so it was kind of a mix of finding the things having the lab, having the things I really wanted to do, and also having a really good meeting.
Mhm. Okay, our final question, because I went ahead and answered that last one in the chat, is how did you land your first research positions and your grad position? So my first research position was the summer before undergrad. I have a weird background. I feel like I say this constantly. In high school, I was an exotic animal handler for the ASPCA of like animal boarding situations. So I had a lot of skills with strange animals. And so I was brought in actually as a vivarium tech, which isn't technically a research role. I just took care of all the different lab animals. And then when I was a vivarium tech, then I learned about research. And then I was put like in contact with a list of people to apply to. And I cold emailed all of them. And I said, I'm a freshman. I'm interested in research, and actually was in one lab that was unhealthy before I ended up in the lab I spent the rest of my undergrad at. And I'm still in contact with him. His daughter is actually going to be a freshman at UW this year, and he's been really important for my career. For Elizabeth, she had a project in mind, which was just data science for the brain. I had never coded before. I said, cool, I'll do it. Sounds good. And worked out.
Yeah, my first research project ever was freshman year, summer freshman year of college. I joined a summer research REU program, so summer research experiences. Lots of universities have these. Highly recommend to join one of them. Yeah, so I got my first research position through an REU in undergrad, and then in grad school, yeah, similar to Hawley, I found Elizabeth. She had a project for me. I thought it sounded cool. Here we are.
My first research position was absolutely dumb luck. I was on a sports team in junior. Okay, I'm a junior of undergrad, or no, junior of high school. Sorry. And one of my dad started talking to one of my teammates' dad and told him that I was interested in neuroscience. And my friend's dad was like, "Oh, did you know that I run a neurological surgery lab at UW? Does your son want to volunteer there for next year, see if he likes it?" And of course, I said yes. And so that's the lab I ended up joining my freshman year, going to UW. So honestly, just complete luck there. And then for grad school, yeah, I cold emailed Elizabeth, and she responded within 50 minutes, which made me realize this is probably going to be a good fit. But yeah, I think cold emailing is like can often be the way to go, but also just like talking to people and about your interests can sometimes help too.
Yeah. So that's an introduction to all of us. If you consent and are willing to be in a screenshot, I'm gonna unspotlight everyone. Elizabeth